He did not found a religion. He did not take the throne. He did not kill anyone. And he did not die a tragic death. He simply sat and taught, wore plain cloth robes, wrote a few sentences that sounded reasonable, and somehow he reprogrammed the behavior of half the world. No divinity, no miracles, just a soft-spoken line, "To be human is to be filial." And just like that, you obediently washed dishes from childhood to old age. The story you are about to hear is not about a king nor a revolutionary. It is about a man who never held power yet forced everyone in power to live by the standards he defined. His ideas are light as wind, but they bind like chains. You do not know you are following him. But he is present in every scolding from your mother, every silent nod from your father, and every time you skipped breakfast to buy a gift for your grandmother. Before we begin this series, about the man who manipulated history through kindness, if you are curious about truths that history tried to polish away, or about the figures who never ruled but wrote the rules that rulers followed, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are listening from. Together, we are about to explore how a teacher whom no one listened to during his lifetime became the loudest voice in every Asian household for the past 2,500 years. His name was Confucius, and his story you may think you know, but I promise you have never heard it told like this. Who do you think is the most influential person in history? Jesus, possibly. People rewrote all of human history based on the time before and after he was born. Muhammad, certainly. A prophet, a politician, a founder of a nation. Socrates, fair enough. Rational thinking, critical questioning, and a philosophy rooted in the idea of doubt everything, even yourself. But let us take a step back. Not everyone had a war to spread their faith. Not everyone had miracles, a cross, or a resurrection to build a church. There was a teacher, in the most literal sense of the word teacher. He did not carry messages from the heavens. He did not establish a religious sect. He did not preach about Judgment Day. He did not own a single inch of land in his lifetime. No one nailed him to a cross, and no one built a golden statue of him when he died. And yet, 2,500 years later, he still shapes the behavior of nearly half the world, using a weapon that no religion, no empire, and no politician has ever been able to steal: shame. His name was Confucius. Confucius, if you prefer the original pronunciation. And this was not some gentle old teacher guiding obedient students on how to live a good life. This was the chief executive officer who founded a massive cultural corporation, providing social operating software for empires stretching from China to Vietnam, from Korea to Japan, and no one could ever sue for copyright. Not because he hid the source code, but because that code lives inside each person's mind, in the folds of cultural habits, in the family dinner table, in the respectful yes when bowing, in the silent compromise when you know you are right, but your boss is not. Confucius did not need technology. He did not need wealth. He did not need stories of miracles. All he needed was a single powerful question. If the world falls into chaos, who should be the first to stay silent? You think Jesus had many followers. Yes, he did. But he was crucified in less than 3 years. Muhammad had an army impressive, but he was also a general, a head of state, a strategist. Socrates, his death forced the Western world to rethink the meaning of life. And Confucius, he did not die for anyone. He died in silence with a pile of manuscripts, a few loyal students, and no one applying his ideas while he was still alive. He was even fired. Multiple times. Appointed, then dismissed, for being too virtuous. Yes, too moral to work in politics. If the world were a corporation, Jesus would be the creative department. Muhammad would be the decision-making chief executive officer, and Confucius would be the person who wrote the policy manual for the Human Resources Department, the one that makes you hesitate to go to the restroom without asking for permission. What made Confucius a global phenomenon was not his ability to inspire. It was his ability to make people control themselves through honor. He built a system with hierarchy, with responsibility, with unwritten laws, and no need for courts because your conscience would judge you first. If you failed, you would not go to hell. You would simply bring shame to your parents. And for many in Asia, that is worse than the fires of purgatory. Confucianism is not a religion. It is an operating system, a background script silently running through everyday behavior. No church, but there is an ancestral altar. No religious wedding, but a traditional marriage ceremony with more rituals than a royal coronation. No God said, but plenty of your parents said. No preaching pastors, but homeroom teachers reading from the Analects during morning assembly. And the best part, you cannot opt out of this system. There is no unsubscribe button. There is no I decline the terms and conditions. Because Confucianism does not ask for your faith. It simply requires that you behave properly. Properly means knowing your rank, knowing when to bow, knowing when to stay silent, and above all, knowing not to disgrace your family name. A child raised within a Confucian system does not learn how to argue. They learn how to comply, not because they are stupid, but because they understand that survival is sometimes more important than being right. That is the kind of power Jesus never had. Muhammad did not possess it. Socrates never imagined it. But Confucius, with the patience of a turtle carrying books on its back, planted it into every Asian household like a parasitic mushroom called morality. You think you are doing the right thing because you are a good person. Sorry, you are doing it because an old man 2,500 years ago wrote to care for your parents. Is that not filial piety? And that was just the warm-up. In the next part, we will dive into how Confucius's background operating system quietly infiltrated every corner of politics, society, and family, turning kings into fanboys and everyday citizens into lifelong volunteers for a cultural sentence no one ever asked a lawyer to defend. Are you ready? Because this is the moment you realize that old teacher did not need divinity to become immortal. He just needed you to keep obeying. If Jesus had the cross, if Muhammad had the Quran, if Moses had the 10 Commandments carved in stone, then Confucius had a 6th grade textbook printed on paper so thin that copying it out 3 times for punishment would tear the page apart. There, you see no religious sect, no fantastical legends. No one went out to preach in his name. No one died for him. And no one has ever perished in the name of Confucian faith. And it is precisely because of that he became the most dangerous religion ever created. A religion people do not even realize they are following. Imagine going to see a doctor. The doctor tells you that you suffer from chronic anxiety due to your constant need to please your parents. You say, "No, I just love my parents." The doctor looks at you, then points to the family tree of 3 generations, sitting at one table where you were not allowed to speak while eating, not allowed to laugh out loud, and to that invisible sign in your head that says, "Whose child is this?" A sign that has hung there since before you could walk. There are no miracles, only tradition, and standing behind that tradition is a humble teacher named Confucius, who wrote the framework that guided half the world to live properly. What is strange is that he never intended to create a religion. Unlike other spiritual founders, who gathered followers, spread teachings, preached faith, and then vanished into legend. Confucius made no promises of heaven. He never threatened hell. He did not tell you to pray. He did not ask you to believe in anything. All he said was something along the lines of, "As a child, here is how you should behave. As a ruler, here is how you should govern. As a human being, do not be rude. And if everyone understands their role, society will function like the gears of a Swiss watch." It sounds simple, but this was the greatest civilization hack in history. Confucius did not found a religion. He created a behavioral protocol so precise, so effective, that later empires decided, hey, no need to overthink. Let's use this to govern the people. And everything exploded not because of belief, but because governments love order. You may have religion, great, but you might still rebel. You may have faith, wonderful, but if that faith clashes with the emperor, you become a threat. But if you believe that social hierarchy is natural, that parents are always right, that the emperor is heaven's mandate, and that you must endure for the honor of your family name, then congratulations. You have just placed limits on yourself with a moral smile. Confucius had no outreach organization, no priests, no temples, no councils of bishops. All he left behind was a set of books, a few students who took notes, and a few hundred years later, some dynasties who said, "This is good. Let us upgrade it to state doctrine." From that point on, the teachings of Confucius not only survived, they were formalized, politicized, and legalized, complete with ceremonial hats and golden swords. From the Han Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty, from Kyoto to Seoul. Confucius became the founding father of a restrained civilization where people are so polite, they are afraid to breathe too loudly. Now here comes the twist that middle-aged audiences might enjoy. Confucian thought does not teach people to be weak. No, not at all. He never told you to live in fear. He taught you to practice restraint in order to survive. In the spring and autumn era where kings could kill their ministers like cutting grass, you could not afford to be a revolutionary. You had to be someone who understood the skies, observed others, and knew when to hold your breath and wait. So make no mistake, the ritual and etiquette that Confucius taught was not weakness. It was a survival strategy in a world where disrespect meant losing your head. That is why Confucius never needed a church, because his teachings did not require prayer to function. They needed to be practiced in the family, in the classroom, in government. And once it was embedded into the bloodstream of culture, no one needed to read the Analects daily because your behavior automatically follows like a background app running silently. To end this section, let us reflect. Religion usually needs faith. Philosophy usually needs reason. Politics needs power. And Confucius, he only needed you to want to be a good child, a good citizen, a loyal subject. And you thought you chose that path yourself. In truth, he hard-coded that choice into your operating system before you ever learned to read. In the next part, we will decode why Confucius, not Jesus, not Muhammad, found his way into people's meals, greetings, postures, and silences across billions of lives for over 2 millennia. No need to bless anyone. Just teach them the proper way, to bow. You do not need to believe in Confucius to live exactly as he taught. You just need to be born in China, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, or into any Asian family where talking back to elders once earned you a beating. You believe that etiquette is important? You believe that being filial is the essence of being human. You think 1 moment of patience brings 9 moments of peace. You long to be praised by your parents in front of the extended family. Congratulations, you are a loyal user of Confucius OS. the background operating system that cannot be uninstalled. This system does not require you to log in. It starts running by default the moment you open your eyes to this world. The one who installed it in your mind was not Confucius. It was your grandparents, then your parents, then your first-grade moral education teacher, and then society itself looking at you with that unspoken expectation. Be decent or people will say you were not raised right. Take a look at the map. From Sichuan in China to Kyoto in Japan, from Seoul in Korea to Hue in Vietnam. The four major cultures of East Asia all share certain features: a hierarchical family structure, deep reverence for ancestors, extreme diplomacy and ritual etiquette, exam systems so brutal they draw blood, and a deep fear of bringing shame upon the family name. These cultures are not similar because of shared ethnicity. They are similar because they all adopted the same Confucian cultural model. No empire was ever large enough to soft conquer all of Asia with weapons. But the ideas of one unemployed teacher did it, through textbooks and behavioral codes. And it did not stop in ancient times. Confucius lived on and evolved with every dynasty. The Han Dynasty made Confucianism a state religion. The Song Dynasty created Neo-Confucianism, adding metaphysics logic and layers of complexity just to make it harder for students to pass exams. The Edo-era Japanese used Confucius as a guiding principle to govern the people even while the samurai decapitated their enemies with perfect courtesy. Vietnam's Nguyen Dynasty used Confucianism to reinforce royal authority, building civil exams and selecting officials with high moral standards, who occasionally were blind to practical reality. Confucianism was not just studied, it was repackaged, rebranded, marketed as traditional morality, then embedded by governments into laws, rituals, and cultural norms, as if it were the only truth. You might not remember all of the 4 books and 5 classics, but you definitely know these children must not talk back to elders. Older siblings must give way to the younger ones. Always greet people respectfully. Girls should not laugh too loudly. Offend now, win hearts later. None of these lines list an author, but if there were footnotes, they would all say, see Confucius 500 before the Common Era. And it is not just culture. Confucianism rewired how society operates. In China, the imperial exam system was entirely based on moral philosophy, not practical skills, teaching how to be a virtuous official, not how to actually work. In South Korea, the patriarchal system, favoring sons over daughters, was legally justified using Confucian quotations. In Japan, office etiquette so strict it feels suffocating, rooted in Confucian order. In Vietnam, hungry and bald, but still must politely invite Uncle 3 to dinner, rich in ceremonial flavor. This means Confucius did not just influence individual minds. He steered the entire logic of a civilization, and the most remarkable or terrifying part no one notices. Because Confucius has no visual symbols like crosses or cathedrals. There is no grand celebration marking the day he ascended, no sacred music, no myths. His ideas are like water, transparent, invisible, yet present everywhere. He does not need you to worship him. He just needs you to breathe within his system. You thought these stories belonged only to Asians. Bad news, Confucianism is alive in the modern world too. The South Korean chaebol model Confucius. Japanese corporations with a chief executive officer as old as a sect leader Confucius. Vietnamese students burying themselves in after-school lessons because education makes a person virtuous Confucius. Asian dads who never say I love you but serve chicken soup Confucius again. And it is precisely this invisibility that makes Confucius more dangerous than any spiritual leader in history. Jesus has churches. Confucius has the ancestral altar. Muhammad had an empire. Confucius has collective culture. Marx had an ideology. Confucius has a grandmother who still calls her 55-year-old son that little boy. That is his gentle yet checkmating move. He never needed an army. He only needed you to not want to disappoint your parents. In the next part, we will lift the curtain on Confucius versus Socrates to see the contrast between one who asked for truth, one who asked who should wash the dishes, and it is the second who has made people go to bed on time for the past 2,000 years. If you speak the truth in an Asian family, you will get scolded for being disrespectful, not because you are wrong, but because you disrupted the order. And in the world of Confucius, order is more important than truth. Let us compare the two greatest philosophers in human history. One man walked around Athens asking old soldiers and sculptors, "Do you really know what you are doing?" The result: executed, drank poison, and ascended to a 1,000-year pedestal of glory. The other man, he walked through vassal states asking kings, officials, and students, "Are you acting according to virtue?" The result: rejected, unemployed for years. But he left behind a set of ideas that would govern entire empires. No one had to die, and no rebellion was needed. Socrates wanted to unlock personal thinking. Confucius wanted to package social behavior. Socrates believed truth is absolute. Humans must critique themselves. Everyone has reason to discover truth. Confucius believed truth is good, but order is what keeps the world from collapsing. Humans should know their role, respect etiquette, and understand their place. And sometimes, too much truth just ruins a perfectly good family dinner. Socrates loved to argue. Confucius loved to teach. Socrates was a useful troublemaker. Confucius was the man who fixed the system without needing to reboot it. Both wanted to improve society. The difference was, one dug into the individual. The other built fences around the collective. In the West, philosophy is a game of questioning and critique. Who am I? What is the world? Where is the truth? In the East, philosophy, Confucian philosophy, is a social simulation game. What should a father be like? How should a king behave? At what angle should a child bow to the neighborhood elder? This is not a battle of who is right, who is wrong. It is the difference between two cultural goals. The West discover truth to liberate the individual. The East preserve order to stabilize the collective. So why did Confucius choose order over truth? Because he lived in an era of madness. Constant wars, warlords in revolt. A world where the truth of the powerful was delivered by the blade. Where a philosopher's ideals could be trampled under the hooves of a general's horse. In that world, Confucius did not seek truth. He sought repeatable peace. A child who bows to elders, even if they do not know why. A wife who steps back, even if she is not happy. A king who shows mercy, even if he could punish. A servant who lowers his head, even when filled with rage. He called it ritual, and ritual was the software of peace, while the world relied on hardware made of swords. Socrates believed in self-awareness. Confucius, not so much. He did not expect everyone to understand truth for themselves. So instead of waiting for enlightenment, he created a behavior manual, and if you followed it, society functioned. No need for comprehension, just correct action. A version of philosophy that closely resembles server control software. It does not ask the computer, Does this feel morally right? It only asks, are you running the code? So who was right? The answer is both, but not at the same time. When the world is at peace, you need Socrates to explore, to reflect, to innovate. But when the world is falling apart, you need Confucius to rebuild, to stabilize, to keep people from losing their minds. In other words, Socrates is the startup founder. Confucius is the information technology support. One challenges the system, the other maintains it so it does not crash. And in the modern world, both still live on. Socrates in Western culture. Freedom of speech, journalism, government criticism. Confucius in Eastern culture, office hierarchy. Do not argue with your boss and children still sending money home during Lunar New Year. Which one do you prefer? It does not matter. Whichever one you grew up in, that is the one that shaped you. And here is the truth. If you are Asian, try saying what you truly feel during a family reunion dinner. And you will learn that Socrates died from poison, while you will die for disrespecting Uncle Number 2. In the next part, we will dive deeper into why Confucius, without preaching, without promising heaven, still managed to make the world obey him, simply because no one wanted to make their parents sad. And why? That is more powerful than belief in any god. There is no heaven. There is no hell. There is only the look in your parents' eyes when you bring them shame. Jesus asks you to believe so you may be saved. Muhammad asks you to believe so you may be forgiven. Buddha advises you to understand so you may be released from reincarnation. And Confucius, he promised nothing. No paradise, no sacred relics, no reincarnation, no angels with wings waiting to welcome you. All he offered was a checklist of behavior. A child must be filial. A student must be respectful. A servant must be loyal. A citizen must be obedient. And if you follow these rules, no one will praise you. It just means no one will criticize you. And in the world of Confucius, that is already the greatest reward. Confucius does not sell faith. He offers a silent social contract. If you play by the rules, you will be accepted. Not accepted by divinity, but accepted by your community, by your family, by your relatives, by Uncle Number 3 next door. And in the Confucian world, acceptance is more satisfying than salvation. Western thought teaches you are an independent individual. Truth lies within you. You need no one's permission, just live your truth. Confucianism says, you are part of a chain. You represent your clan, your ancestors, and your unborn descendants. Personal happiness. Sure, but first, please wash the dishes. Honor your parents, and do not bring disappointment to the family. The fear in other religions is being cast into hell, being punished by gods, being excluded from the divine realm. The fear in Confucianism is bringing shame to your family, becoming a topic of gossip, being labeled a disobedient child. There is no purgatory fire, only dinners filled with suffocating silence. There are no demons in the shadows, only the words. How could you behave in a way that forces your parents to bow their heads to the neighbors? And the most fascinating or terrifying part is, it works. It works so well that you feel guilty, even when you are right. You follow your conscience, great. But if your parents cry and say, "What will the neighbors think?" then suddenly you begin to feel like you were wrong, simply because you did the right thing at the wrong time. Confucius does not threaten you with supernatural weapons. He simply reveals this truth. Human beings are creatures who live through the eyes of others, and so his system turns the community into your judge. There are no prisons, only shame. You do not need to fear demons. You just need to fear your mother saying what you did. Embarrassed your father and me. This is not religious coercion. This is internalized social pressure. You think you are free. You think you choose your own morality. You are mistaken. You are merely optimizing your behavior to maintain personal reputation within a collective. A form of moral gamification. You do the right thing not because you are good, but because it keeps you out of trouble. And that is where Confucius differs entirely from other spiritual leaders. He does not control you through belief. He controls you through expectation. Belief can change. Social expectations are almost impossible to uninstall. Belief only exists as long as you believe. Expectations exist even when you try to run away. You can leave a religion, but you cannot leave your mother. You can stop believing in God, but you cannot stop fearing your father's stare during the ancestral ceremony. You can become an atheist, but you will still clean the house before Lunar New Year, wear a suit to family memorials, and bow to the neighborhood elder every time you pass by. Not because you believe in doctrine, but because you have been trained, domesticated by shame. That is a psychological force stronger than dogma, because it requires no promises, no punishments. It only needs a society that keeps whispering, "You must live properly." And what is proper? It is following the script written 2,500 years ago by a teacher without miracles or divine power, using ink and silk paper. In the next part, we will pull back the curtain to reveal why emperors, from Qin Shi Huang to Jia Long, adored Confucius the way chief executive officers adore key performance indicators, and why, even though he never ruled, Confucius built the most silent and stable ruling system in human history. If you were a king, would you want your people to be intelligent, skeptical, and questioning your authority? Or would you prefer they call you the Son of Heaven and bow their heads awaiting your command you do not need to answer? The emperors of the past already chose for you. They chose Confucius. Not because Confucius was a great philosopher, not because he was good at teaching students to spell in classical Chinese, and certainly not because he had some revolutionary economic reform, but because he offered the most sophisticated tool of control ever invented, a moral system that taught people to self-censor, self-submit, and teach one another to bow. You might not remember which emperor won which battle, but you definitely remember being taught. Children must not argue with their parents. Students must not challenge their teachers. Loyal subjects must not disobey their kings. Who taught you these things? Not your parents, but the one who taught your parents how to teach you. And that chain stretches all the way back to an old man in a cloth robe 2,500 years ago. He never wore a crown. He never sat on a throne. All he had was a writing brush and a mind that knew how to make authority feel sacred. Kings adored Confucius, not because he helped them rule better, but because he helped them rule less and never be overthrown. How? He told the people, be filial, so they would not rebel too busy honoring their ancestors. He told students, be respectful, so people would line up on their own, no need for law enforcement. He told ministers, be loyal, so officials would die for their king and smile while doing it. He told women, be obedient, so families stayed quiet, the state stayed calm, and no one asked for women's rights back then, meaning you did not need to suppress the people with an army. You just needed them to believe that obedience was the right thing to do. And thus, that system became the most elegant governance software package in history. The Han Dynasty was the first to install it. It worked. It was smooth. No bugs. so future dynasties kept upgrading it. The Song dynasty developed Neo-Confucianism. The Ming dynasty added functions to suppress heresy. The Nguyen dynasty in Vietnam integrated it into national academies and ancestral temples. Japan reinvented it into Bushido, discipline ceremony submission, still tinted with Confucian values. Confucian thought became the moral cement holding entire empires together. No need for police. Villages had customary laws. No need for schools teaching critical thinking. Schools taught the analects. No need for state-controlled media. People self-censored out of honor. All you needed was rule by virtue. A concept that sounds gentle but was firmly welded to the throne. It may sound harmless. It was not. Rule by virtue did not mean the ruler was kind. It meant the ruler did not have to raise his voice, and people would still obey. Instead of whips, prisons, and blood-soaked blades, you ruled with affection, duty, filial piety, and loyalty to the sovereign. And if someone dared oppose it, no soldiers needed. Just a neighbor whispering, "That man is disloyal, disrespectful, and without honor." That was the end. Social death. Game over. The ancient rulers discovered something profound. Confucius was not just a philosopher. He was a behavioral engineer. Like a prehistoric user experience designer, he created a social interface where everyone knew which buttons to press in order to stay within the community. And when a belief system gets people to self-regulate, to fall in line, to teach their children the same rules without being told, then ruling becomes effortless. Which is why this strange situation arose. Confucius never became a king. Yet every king built him a temple. No army bore his name. Yet every empire applied his ideas to control its people. Confucius was a godless prophet, a thinker without a religion, the author of a handbook on being human, used by others as a manual for domination. In other words, he never built a dictatorship, but he wrote the user manual to operate one, with a gentle smile. In the final part, we will explore the endgame, how Confucius, once a tool for ruling empires, became a cultural legacy, a psychological inheritance, and sometimes a shadow that never disappears. And the biggest question of all, if Confucius had never existed, would you still know how? To be a decent person, some became kings and were beheaded. Some founded religions and were burned. Some preached and were forgotten. But Confucius, he simply taught and quietly reshaped half the world. No bloodshed, no rebellion, no battle for the throne, no claims of divinity, sainthood, or heavenly mandate. Just an old man in a cloth robe holding the analects, softly saying, "Cultivate yourself, manage your family, govern your state, bring peace to the world." And somehow, he did exactly that. Do you want to know why Confucius was great? Not because he conquered vast lands, but because he defined how billions of people should behave for 2,500 years without ever raising his voice. He did not need to win in life, because he wrote the rules for those who did. You conquer the world, fine, as long as you still bow to your mother, as long as you still teach your son, be loyal to your ruler, be filial to your parents, as long as when you become king, you still govern with virtue. At that point, no matter your name, Qin Shi Huang Emperor Wu of Hanjia Long, you are still a player in a world designed by Confucius. Here is the final twist. Confucius did not seek power. He created the moral standard that anyone with power must follow. You may win the throne with a sword, but to keep it, you need virtue. And that virtue, he wrote it. No one forced it, but everyone followed it, unless they wanted to be branded a tyrant without virtue. So Confucius never needed to win. because he made everyone win on his terms. You are talented, be humble. You are wealthy, show restraint. You hold power. Use it with precision and timing. He never said, I am right and you are wrong. He simply said, live in a way that does not make your mother cry. And somehow that defeated every other ideology. Revolutionaries take power, but 10 years later they return to rebuild rituals, promote filial piety, and teach morality in schools. New religions emerge preaching salvation, but they still borrow Confucian language to instruct their children. You must honor your ancestors, be compassionate, be righteous. Even dictatorships hang slogans like live responsibly for your family and your country. A clean modern version of cultivate yourself, manage your family, govern the state. This is victory without a rally. No followers, no miracles. A victory like a virus, tiny, quiet, unseen, but spreading, weaving itself into the DNA of civilization. Today you may not believe in God. You may not worship Buddha. You may live a modern, free, individualistic life. But if you feel guilty for speaking too honestly to your parents, do not dare eat before your grandparents, feel something is off when you challenge your teacher, then you are still living in Confucius mode, and you have no idea when he first programmed you. You want to escape Confucian thought, that will be difficult, because it has no church, no religion, no legal code. It lives in habits, glances, and the words, do not make your mother sad. Out there you must protect the family's reputation. You must never do anything to shame the clan. This is not a philosophy. It is the softest, yet strongest string Confucius tied around society. Confucius never wanted to be the winner. He just wrote the rules so that whoever wins must play his game. You do not need to build a statue of him. You do not need to light incense for him. As long as you believe that being a decent person is a duty, he has already won. And it is the kind of victory no one could resist. You may reclaim power. You may rebuild the world. But you will always return to teaching your child how to be polite. And when you do, somewhere in the back of history, the old man smiles and says, I never ruled, but I left behind the blueprint for every kingdom. End of story. There is no after-credit scene, just the living room light, your mother calling you to dinner, and a quiet question, have I lived properly? Congratulations! You have just been chosen to serve inside the Forbidden City, the beating heart of the Ming Empire's power. A place where golden dragons sleep, silver dragons smoke opium, and mortals like you are simply called tools to be squeezed dry and thrown away. You are 17 years old, the perfect age to learn how to love. But love what when tomorrow morning you will be placed on a wooden board, still stained with dried blood, and the part between your legs will be cut off to the chant of Long live the Son of Heaven. The sun has not yet risen. The air still carries the scent of dew and the stench of human waste mixed with long rotted garbage piled in the corner of the yard. You wake up in a stone room where 18 others just like you are crammed together like pigs. There is snoring. There is the sound of a blade being sharpened in the distance. Or maybe you are just imagining it, you do not know. Because you could never have imagined that the day everyone dreams of would begin with the smell of mold and the first words being, get up. It is your turn for glory. You tremble, but not from the cold. Your hand is still swollen from the punch delivered by the guard yesterday, after you made the mistake of asking, can we go home to visit our mothers after entering the palace? He laughed. Everyone laughed. You no longer have a mother. You line up. Someone ahead of you has already shaved his head and smeared ashes on his forehead. A sign of surrender or a final goodbye, you do not know. A voice echoes out flat, emotionless, like a storyteller who has repeated the same lines 1,000 times. You have been chosen. You will serve the imperial palace. You will shed your mortal bodies in exchange for purity. You are the pride of the celestial dynasty. A fly buzzes past your face. You have not eaten since yesterday. Hunger makes your head feel heavy like lead, and your legs ache as if you have walked for months in a dream. You are all led into another room. They call it the preparation chamber. In truth, it is a livestock washroom, a copper trough stinking of rust, and several buckets of water so cold your heart clenches when it touches your skin. Take off your clothes. You hear the order, and no one resists. No more clothing. No more names. All that is left is the bone-deep cold and the blank stare of the old soldier who inspects each of you one by one. He does not look at you like a person. He examines you the way someone inspects a radish before slicing it. The boy next to you silently cries. His tears mix with the bathwater. You dare not cry. Because anyone who cries gets beaten until they can no longer struggle. Not because crying is forbidden, but because the court despises anyone who still has feelings. An elderly eunuch walks in. He surveys the room with tired eyes, the kind of tired that comes from having counted enough corpses for a lifetime. Pick someone to write down your name, so that if you die, your bones can be sent back to your village. No one raises a hand. One boy steps forward quietly. His hand is trembling. You want to write your name too, but you do not even know if your village still exists. Since the famine, the chaos, and the crushing taxes that burned your entire region to the ground, you have not heard your hometown's name again. You think of your father. He once told you, be a good man. You do not know if after tomorrow, after losing a part of your body, you can still call yourself a man. The next room leads to a small courtyard, which they call the banquet of honor. A bamboo tray holds a few cold dishes and a bowl of rice wine. Everyone sits down. No one eats. A soldier steps forward and shouts, "Drink. So tomorrow you will not feel the pain." You hold the bowl of wine, drain it dry, swallowing your tears with it. A man sitting near you, he looks older, leans in and whispers, "I once had a wife. She was beautiful. I entered the palace so she would not be sold away." You look at him. He shakes his head. "The day I went back to visit, they had already buried her. Because she once slept with me and I am no longer a man." You do not ask anything else. Because there is nothing more to say. No one here wants to speak anymore. You sit still, watching the sun start to peek over the high walls. Its pale golden light looks like someone who has been sick for years. Not warm enough, not alive enough. You think about the sound of birds. There are none. In the Forbidden City, birds do not fly in. No one knows why. They say this place holds too many curses, and you will become one of them. Congratulations. You have just woken up, and you have already started dying. In a palace the world thinks is heaven. You thought you had hit rock bottom. But no, the palace has more layers of hell than it has windows. And this morning you step into the next one, the purification chamber. No one calls it a bathhouse. A bathhouse is where people wash away dirt. Here you are washing yourself of humanity. You step into a dark room sealed shut like a tomb. Light trickles in through a single round hole in the ceiling. Incense smoke hangs thick like dream fog. The scent of camphor mixes with the smell of dried blood and old skin, as if someone once flayed a man here and hung the hide from the rafters to dry. The guard hands you a bucket of cold water. Not the refreshing kind of cold. The kind of cold that turns your fingernails purple and tightens your throat like an invisible hand. Shave everything. The order is given. There is no razor, only a rusted shard of metal passed from one boy to the next. You do not know where to begin. An elderly eunuch nods toward you, motioning. Start with the head, then the armpits, the groin, the neck, the back, and anywhere else that might interrupt the processing. The metal scrapes your skin like a dull knife scaling a live fish. With every pull, your flesh stings and blood seeps out slowly but steadily like a ritual that is draining you from the inside out. The boy beside you, younger, his hands tremble too much to shave. A guard storms over, grabs the metal, and scrapes him like someone shaving a dead dog. You see his eyes filling with tears, but none fall. As if even his body knows crying here is useless. After you are clean, you are ordered to kneel in the center of the room. A figure emerges from the shadows, no introduction needed, yet everyone bows. An elder voice with a face like carved wood, and a voice like scissors gliding over damp silk, the sacred oath. To destroy desire, to become a silent part of power. You do not understand all of it, but you know from this moment on, any dream inside, you will be judged as a crime. He pours water drops, 3 white petals into the bowl, and commands you to drink. The taste is namelessly bitter, lingering like ash. Your oath will be written in the registry. But whether your blood remembers you or not, that no one can say. You nod. Not because you believe, but because you do not want to be asked twice. Then comes a wooden tray, holding 2 small iron balls blackened and misshapen from being heated too many times. You are ordered to place your hand on them not to swear, but to burn yourself. This mark will remind you you were once human, and you have given that up. You grit your teeth, lower your hand. The smell of burning flesh rises. The sizzle echoes like laughter in a nightmare. Someone behind you faints. He is dragged away like a sack of rice. No one is allowed to speak. But every eye meets another, asking the same silent question, will I make it through the night? You are not sure. Each heartbeat feels like you are being peeled one layer further from reality. Something inside you is dying, and it is not just the physical part. When it is all done, they hand you a new set of clothes. Gray. No buttons. No name embroidered. Who are you? A soldier asks. You give your name. He shakes his head. No, from now on you are number 403. You are no longer you. You lower your head. It feels like being reborn, but in a world with no mother, no language, and no sunlight. You leave the room just as the 3rd night drum echoes. Moonlight glints off the brick courtyard, where blood once dripped from the fingers of those not pure enough. You know that tomorrow you will lie on the stone table. No one needs to hold you down, because a person with no escape needs no chains. You return to the sleeping room. The boy beside you snores wetly. Another one mutters prayers. Someone whispers to heaven. Someone taps on the wall, the 3 short beats, 2 long ones, a code with no reply. You lie down. Your stomach is empty. Your hand burns. Your chest feels like it is crushed under stone. But what keeps you awake is the question that just flickered into your mind. If I survive tomorrow, will the person who survives still be me? Noon never comes. Here light does not tell time. Only the sound of footsteps rhythmic repeating. And when they echo longer than usual, you know it is mealtime. They call it the farewell feast. A beautiful name. As if you are boarding a boat to explore a new land, rather than lying down on a stone table and waiting for a blade to stop at just the right spot. You, along with others like you, are led into a courtyard, small and closed with moss growing like tongues clinging to the walls. In the center sits a large wooden tray. Meat, porridge, wine. The aroma is faint, not enough to stir hunger, but just enough to make your stomach twist in bitter irony. On the wall hangs a small wooden board with calligraphy, the final meal for one who was once a man. You do not say it out loud, but your mind keeps repeating it like a curse. The final meal. Once a man. As if someone has already written your obituary while you are still breathing. You sit down on a straw mat. Your knees bleed from rubbing against stone all morning. Your backside aches. Your shoulders throb. But you stay silent. Because groaning would place you on the weak list, and they process the weak ones first. Someone pours the wine. The ceramic bowl is chipped. The wine is cloudy. It smells like what drunkards used to urinate in the village square. You drink it. Not for the taste, but to forget even briefly. A boy across from you, face pale like quicklime, whispers. The last time I ate like this was on my wedding day. My mother cooked. You look at him. He smiles. His front teeth are gone. Not from fighting, but from grinding in his sleep, haunted by nightmares. He continues unprompted. She had big eyes, long hair, promised to wait. I entered the palace. 3 years, no word. When I returned, she had been taken away because she was pregnant. He does not say who the father was. You do not need to ask. In here, men are cut. Out there, women are bartered. Neither gets to choose. Another one, thin as a reed hands, still stained with old blood, suddenly laughs. I once slept with a princess. Everyone goes quiet. Not out of respect, but to see how far this story will fall. He keeps laughing. It was not my idea. She called for me. I was scared, but she smiled and said, "Just tonight. Tomorrow you will no longer be a man. Let me be the last." You do not know if it is true or made up, but in his eyes you see something like water just about to turn into vapor. A guard throws a chunk of meat onto the tray. The skin still has hairs. The fat is cold. You pick up your chopsticks, try a bite. The meat is slippery, bland, like a slice of skin cut from someone who just left the castration room. You gag, not from the smell, but from the feeling rising from your belly into your chest, a kind of breaking. You are not hungry, but you no longer have the strength to refuse. Because since morning, every part of you has been stripped away bit by bit. You hear tapping. An old eunuch stands gently, taps his bowl. Drink more. Tomorrow morning will hurt. But the wine helps numb what should not be felt. Someone asks, what about the part that is still alive? No one answers. Everyone drinks. You have heard stories of men who did not die from blood loss, but from being too conscious during the cutting. They screamed, convulsed, twisted, until their insides tore and blood filled their lungs. Drink is the last kind advice you will get. You look around. Nearly 20 people of all ages. Some were farmers, some were thieves, some were once teachers. But now all of them are corpses waiting to be carved. No one mentions the future, because any promise beyond today belongs to someone else's mouth. Someone sings, a hoarse voice hums a lullaby. The words are distorted, broken like memories, shredded and stitched back together with rusted thread. You do not cry, but your hands clench so tight they bleed, because the thought hits you one day. Maybe you will try to sing your child to sleep, but you will not be able to have a child. At the end of the meal, you stand. Your stomach is full, not with food, but with the suffocating weight of something you cannot name. You are led back to your room. The night wind is colder than the morning. But the chill no longer makes you shiver. It only reminds you your body is starting to go numb. You think if this is a farewell party, then death is the host, and the guests are just those not brave enough to run. You lie down. The person next to you lets out a faint groan, not clear if from pain, a dream, or just the last reflex of instinct. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to wonder when morning comes and your eyes open again, will the one who wakes still be you do not sleep? Not because of fear, but because your body no longer believes in dreams. It lies there among 19 other breathing corpses, each one bracing in their own kind of silence. No one talks anymore. No one dares snore. Even breaths seem programmed not to make a sound. You think about tomorrow morning not as a moment in time, but as a kind of execution that has already begun and will stretch through the night. The room you lie in, they call it the waiting chamber. Cold stone walls, no windows, no candles. The only light comes from a thin slit in the ceiling, as if the sky itself only dares to peek in with one squinting eye. The smell of ash, urine, sweat, and old incense mixes together, seeping into your nose like a kind of scent designed to make you forget where you came from. You are no longer in your village, no longer on land, no longer inside time. You are in a place where the language of the living no longer applies. The first sound comes at the third watch of the night. A moan, very faint, very distant, but no one in the room misses it. It does not sound human. It does not sound animal. It sounds like the noise your own throat might make if your tongue had been cut out and you still tried to speak. You open your eyes. In the dark, other eyes open too. No one asks, "What was that?" Everyone here is too familiar with things that do not need names, only fear. Someone sits up. His name is Track, you are not sure, because here names are like scraps of cloth stuck to skin about to be peeled away. He whispers every night. At least one person disappears. You ask softly, "Where to?" He does not look at you, just glances toward the corner of the room where there is a small door made of dark red wood worn like a coffin lid. No one dares ask about that door. But by morning, there is always someone missing. You go quiet. Your eyes fix on the door. No lock, no guard, but no one dares to touch it. Another voice rises like someone who has waited a lifetime to speak. They do not take your body. They take the part of your heart that fears most, and they leave behind the shell. Someone else laughs, a dry, cracked laugh soaked in madness. What is there left to fear tomorrow? I will have nothing left to hold on to anyway. You do not know who is right. But you know this, the true fear does not come from the blade. It comes from this moment, deep in the night in the dark, when you are not yet dead, but no longer alive. The moan echoes again closer now, colder, like wind sweeping across a field of human ash. A boy near the door curls up. He shakes like a leaf in snow. He mutters, "It is here. It always comes at this time." You wonder what is it, no one answers. But everyone knows the kind of fear that needs no name. You look at your hand. The burn from earlier is still blistered. The smell of scorched flesh still clings to your memory. You touch it, pain. That pain reassures you. It tells you that you are still you. Suddenly the red door creaks open. No voice calls. No figure steps out. Just the door opening. Naturally, quietly, as if it has always known exactly when to invite a soul inside. Everyone freezes. The boy near the door does not move. His eyes are wide, sweat pouring from his scalp down his neck like a stream. He bites his lip, blood leaks out, but he does not scream. No one goes out. No one comes in. The door stays open for a moment, then slowly closes. No one says a word, but everyone knows this time it came to smell. Next time it will choose. You lie back down. Your heart pounds like a funeral drum, but you do not feel despair. You feel emptiness. You wonder, does death truly come from the blade tomorrow or from the door that just closed? A voice rings in your mind, not yours, but not unfamiliar. Want to escape simple. Lose your mind before you lose everything else. Go insane. That is the only freedom left. You close your eyes. But the darkness inside is no different from the one outside. No one cries. No one sings. Tonight may be the last night you are a creature that knows how to wait. And the thing that chills you the most is not the door, not the moan. It is the thought that flashes across your mind as you begin to drift. If I survive tomorrow, will I become it? The night passed without warning, without end. You do not know whether you had fallen asleep or merely blacked out somewhere between waves of shivering. But when you open your eyes, light seeps through the crack in the door, not sunlight, but fire. No one shouts, no alarms. But in the courtyard, there are hurried footsteps. Someone is dragged past the slit in your door clothes, soaked in blood face, missing its eyes. Not from the fire, not from the guards, from one of your own. Someone who lost his mind, or someone who saw what should never be seen. You do not ask. At this point, every question is just another way to express fear. Fifth watch. Dawn has not yet broken, but you are pulled from the waiting chamber. No warning. An old soldier, his face cold like forged iron, leads you into a small room sealed tight like a burial vault. There you meet someone who once lost everything except life. He sits there, his body like brittle sticks, holding a pipe he does not smoke. The smoke rises on its own. No one introduces him. But you know this is a man who has faced the blade and still remembers. Sit, he says, his voice like gravel tumbling through bamboo. You sit, not out of respect, but because your legs have stopped obeying since morning. He does not look at you. His eyes are fixed on the wall where hundreds of tally marks are carved. Each mark spaced exactly the width of a fingertip. Each one is a year. I do not count age. I count the time I have survived, like a dog. You say nothing. Not out of fear, but because you no longer have words to use. I was cut long before you were even born. My blood spilled, and before it could dry, I had to kneel and serve tea to another eunuch. You want to ask, why are you still here? But he reads the question in your eyes. Because I am proof. Proof that they can take the most visible part of a man, but they cannot take the invisible part, the will. You shiver, not from the cold, but because for the first time someone has spoken of will in a place where all will has been ground to dust, mixed into ash, and scattered across the courtyards. He lifts his hand and points to a metal cabinet. Inside is the list. The list of those who did not survive the cutting, not because of the knife, because of the night. You shiver again, because you understand. Last night you were close to joining that list. He opens the cabinet, pulls out a thin yellowed book, its cover stained with dry blood, its pages handwritten in crooked ink. Every year, 1/3 of those cut die. 1/3 go insane. 1/3 live but never speak again. You whisper, why do they keep doing it? He smiles. No sound. Just a swirl of smoke forming a circle in the air. Because the empire does not need whole people. It needs statues that know how to bow. And castration is the fastest way to sculpt one. You do not know whether to feel rage or terror. But you know this, the truth he offers is not meant to scare you. It is a welcome. a kind of invitation into a deeper layer of hell where no one complains because everyone has already gone silent. Then he pulls out a small knife, wooden handle, curved blade. This is the only chance not to be cut. Your eyes widen. Slice the tendons in your wrist. Just enough. Blood will pour. They will think you could not handle it and take you to the infirmary. From there, you disappear. You take the knife. It is cold. The handle worn smooth by generations of desperate hands. You tremble. You look at your burn from yesterday, at your hands already stained with other people's blood. You know this is the final door. Either you lose what is below, or you lose your identity and become nobody. He looks at you. 1 out of 10 chooses this. 9 choose the knife. But you should know escaping castration is not freedom. It is trading one kind of loss for another. You do not reply. He smiles. Keep it. By sunrise, you will know which to choose. You leave the room, the knife still clutched in your hand. The sky is just beginning to brighten. The sun has not risen, but a red circle spreads across the clouds like blood swirling in water. You know you do not have many hours left, not many companions left, and not many parts of yourself left to choose from. You sit there under a sky without sun, holding the small knife in your hand, as if you are holding on to the final dream of your life. Your hand is numb, not from the cold, but because too many choices have already been taken from you until only one remains, and even it does not feel like an escape. Outside the door, the soldiers are already lined up. They do not need to call your name. They do not need to ask. All they have to do is walk in, grab your shoulder, and take you away like a bundle of straw with legs. You watch them through the crack in the door. They are not cruel, not wicked. They are simply used to it, used to turning people into silence. You still have time, just a few minutes. But those few minutes stretch out like a lifetime you never got to live. In your mind, the old man's words still echo. 9 choose the blade. 1 chooses their own blood. No one gets to choose wholeness. You look down at your hand. The knife glints cold. The skin on your wrist is still untouched. 1 cut, 1 line of blood, 1 silent refusal. You could do it. But are you ready to pay the price of surviving by vanishing as if you never existed? The door opens. A soldier walks in. His eyes meet yours. Not cold, not warm. Just the look of someone who has seen the same moment far too many times. It is your turn. You stand up. Your hand still grips the knife hidden inside your sleeve. No one checks. No one cares. Because resistance is not part of the court script. You follow him. Down a long hallway, across the tiled courtyard, past the wall where birds never perch. You arrive at the castration room, no sign on the door. Just a stone table, white like ivory, stained with dried blood like the writing of demons. There is a bowl of water, a cloth, a needle, a thread, and a silence so thick you can hear the blood rushing in your ears. A man in white approaches, not a doctor, a eunuch. His hand trembles slightly, but his eyes are so empty you wonder if he still sees the world at all. Take off your pants. Lie down. You do. Not out of obedience, but because you want to know if you still have the courage to choose life even in a twisted form. You lie there. Cold stone presses your back like the palm of death itself. Your hand hides the small knife. 1 move is enough to cut the skin. A little blood seeps out. No one notices. You feel the pain, but not enough. You think cut deeper. You raise your hand, slice again, more blood. It drips onto the stone table, blending with the blood of others. The eunuch frowns. What is that? You look at him. Say nothing. He calls the guard. You know you have only seconds left, and then you faint. Not from pain, but because your body decides to leave the meeting before you do. You wake up in a white room. Not the castration room. Not the waiting chamber. Somewhere else. Yellowish light. The sound of a paper fan. The smell of medicine. A man in medical robes stands there. You are number 403, right, cut your wrist. Could not handle it. Had to be brought here. You try to sit up, but your wrist is tightly bandaged. Your head spins like a rotting leaf in a storm. It is fine. We will take you off the list. No one needs to know. Your name will be erased. You will be moved to sanitation. Medical waste division. Speak less, think less. You lie back down. Your eyes fix on the ceiling. A gecko clings upside down, motionless, unblinking. You realize you are alive. You also realize you no longer exist. Not castrated, but no longer one of the chosen. Not dead, but no longer remembered. You think of the others. Right now, someone may be lying on the stone table, blood dripping to the floor, and someone else will wipe it with a cloth used for dozens before. You escaped, but you are not happy. You are just silent. A voice rises in your mind from nowhere. Escaping the blade does not mean escaping the saw of memory. Years pass. You are still alive. You sweep, wash blood, collect ash, wrap trash. You do not speak. No one asks. You are the quiet shadow gliding past crimson walls where officials feast and eunuchs whisper secrets. One night you see a familiar face. Track. The one who once whispered about the door. He sees you, unblinking. You look back, then walk on. No one calls a name, because names were left behind on the stone table where they cut away manhood and a piece of the soul. You survived. Congratulations. But ask yourself, is a person still a person when all they have left is breath? If you think you survived a day like that, try imagining living there for a lifetime. And do not forget to follow, because the next story might be even more wretched.